This is the 2023 Chevy Bolt EV, an electric vehicle that runs entirely on electrons. Today we're going to talk about the car, some of its upsides and downsides, and how it drives. You're watching the "Oh my goodness, it's hot out, why did I choose to film outside today?" Let's get into the air conditioning so I stop melting review of the 2023 Chevy Bolt EV. I know that looks are entirely subjective, but I kind of like the way it looks. Even though the short snout is a little bit squat, it is super duper practical for parallel parking. It makes it very easy to get into parking spaces that a lot of other vehicles couldn't fit in. All right, so let's start her up here. I'll take this guy out of the way. To be clear, I love my Chevy Bolt EV and I don't have buyer's remorse, but I'm gonna tear it apart a little bit in this vehicle, talk about a few of the quirks, I guess, maybe little things that are kind of annoying, but there are two bigger issues with the car that may be deal breakers to some buyers. So let's start with those two big issues. First of all, the slow, fast charging. Sorry in advance for talking in metric, but I am Canadian and I will politely put the conversions up, maybe here, I don't know, somewhere on the screen. Anyways, the slow fast charging is probably the biggest deal breaker for most people when it comes to the Chevy Bolt EV. And it's really only relevant for road trips or for those who don't have charging at home or at work. For me, this was not a huge deal breaker. I can charge at home, and it's rare that I do road trips that are more than about 400 to 500 kilometers in one day. I don't like driving that much in one go. So yeah, but for those of you who are consistently doing, say, 500 plus kilometers in the summer, 400 plus kilometers in the winter, that slow fast charging is going to add a lot of time to road trips. To add some context, the Bolt EV charges at 55 kilowatt under ideal circumstances, which is quite slow compared to other more expensive electric vehicles. Ideal circumstances mean things like ambient temperature, bad charger connection, or a high starting state of charge can reduce the speed that it charges at. For my own personal experience, I've seen as low as 22 and as high as 45 on a 50 kilowatt hour charger. What that means under real world circumstances is that longer road trips with a lot of highway driving can get quite annoying because a charger stop to add 200 to 300 kilometers will be anywhere from about 45 minutes to an hour. This is why the maximum ideal single day trip in the Bolt, in my opinion, is about 500 kilometers, because a 20-minute charge stop is a snack, a stretch, and a snooze. And anything beyond that, stopping halfway, doing a level 2 charge overnight, means that you get an additional 400 kilometers to keep going, then do only a 20-minute charge stop the next day in order to get to about 500 or 600 kilometers. Personally, for the most part, for trips over 600 kilometers, I'd rather fly anyways. I only have so long in my weekends and I can't spend all of that time in the car. I'm about 150 kilometers into my 400 kilometer road trip and I just hit 70% on the battery indicator. Thing is that efficiency has been very high so far because traffic's been quite slow, and the slower you go, the better the battery efficiency tends to be. We've also been driving on flat terrain. Now that we're getting into the mountains, into more open spaces where I can go a little bit faster, I'm keen to see how the battery lasts. So I guess I'll update you when we're at the top of the hill, top of the mountain pass, and yeah, we'll see how the battery's gone. When I first left home this morning, I had an unrealistic estimate of 490 kilometers on the gasometer, with a high-end estimate of nearly 600. And I guess that indicates more about my city driving habits rather than a road trip like this, where we're going on the highway at faster speeds, up steep inclines and high elevation gain. All of those things reduce range quite substantially. In these passing lane sections, it's quite tempting to just gun it and pass all of the traffic, but I want to get there without charging. At 390-ish kilometers, it's going to be pushing it quite tight just due to the elevation gain alone. On a warm summer day like today, it's a solid maybe. Cold winter day, no way. I'm literally watching the kilometers count down on the gasometer as I go up this hill, but we're just about at the top now, and hopefully things will level off, and I guess soon we'll decide if I can make the whole drive in one shot or if I'm gonna have to stop and charge. Look, I'm back into green again. 209 kilometers on the odometer, just over 50% left. That means we are on target to meet the 410k estimated range, which is pretty crazy considering how steep that last hill was. There's one or two more mountain passes to go over, so I guess we'll see at the top of the next one. That's the real big one. That's where I'm going to make the decision if I'll do the whole drive in one shot. Well, there you go. I just passed Sunday Summit, which was the point where I was going to decide whether or not I would make a stop on this trip to charge. And I don't think I actually have to. I'm at 248 kilometers, 43% battery, and the guessometer says it's got 200k left. The lowest guess being 160. So I think realistically I could go all the way. Here we are at the public charger. I didn't have to charge. 60k left in the drive and 100 kilometers left on the guessometer. But I wanted to stop anyways because it turns out the only charging in the town I'm visiting is level 2 and it's really expensive. So yeah, as far as road trips go, pretty good. Real slow though because of how heavy traffic was, and I think that's why we exceeded the range expectations. The next thing we're going to talk about is less of a usability issue with the vehicle and more of a safety issue. So I'm going to flick on the four-way flashers and go back out into the heat. Looking at the headlights of this car, pretty normal, yeah. Nice bright orange turn signals. But then when it comes to the tail lights, you'd expect this guy, this big bright tail light, nice and high up in a very visible location. You'd expect this to be the brake light and the turn signal, but no. It's this little tiny guy, this dull, terribly placed light down here. Most cars have their reflectors in this position, not their brake and turn signals. I find this so stupid because a huge part of driving is about being predictable, and nobody expects to look in that position for the car's brake lights when every other vehicle on the road has their brake lights in a higher up position. I've seen Chevy videos that say, oh, well, we have that one brake light over top of the rear window, and yeah, that is true. But the brake lights that most people look at are the two side ones because not every car has that top brake light. So it's just about safety and predictability, and thankfully Chevy did not have it dumb when it comes to how the brake lights operate in one pedal mode. They turn on when you're slowing down, and they stay turned on when you're stopped even if you're not actually touching the brake. So good on you, Chevy. You did one thing right. Oh yeah, one of the other downsides to having your tail light literally in the bumper is that if you get an a fender bender, instead of maybe doing a bit of panel restoration, you're also going to have to replace a light and possibly some electronics. Yay, Chevy, you did it. And now it's time for the B-roll part of the video. The part of the video where I talk about the things that are relatively minor, shot to beautiful background footage. And I'm going to start with some of the interior things. First, one thing I really like about the vehicle. That's the guessometer. My last car was a Nissan Leaf, and it was always wildly optimistic on the guessometer, often showing me 10 to 30% more kilometers than I'd actually get while driving. I learned to ignore the guessometer on my Leaf very quickly when I almost got stranded. The Bolt, on the other hand, while it does not show an exact battery percentage, it does show a high, medium, and low guess on the guessometer. The high guess being incredibly optimistic, similar to the Leaf was, while the low guess is more on the realistic and even slightly pessimistic side. There's also a helpful little bar that shows you whether you're going more towards the optimistic or more towards the pessimistic guess. Now, on one of those nitpicky notes when it comes to the interior, the dust. That glossy black plastic is super handsome when it's brand new, but it quickly picks up fingerprints and dust like it's nobody's business. This shot here is taken after only a couple days of letting the dust be. This is the first car I've ever owned where I need to keep a cleaning cloth in the door panel to make sure things don't get disgusting. But I am also worried that that black plastic is gonna scratch from too much wiping it off. It's already got some fine little scratches that I can see in certain lighting, and yeah, I guess we'll see how that holds up after a couple years. In terms of other interior oddities, there's one dead button on the panel that just does nothing, doesn't even move. Yet, there's no way to change the vent function from being face, feet, or windshield without using the touchscreen user interface. So dumb, Chevy! Let's talk about driver positioning next. I find the seats to be quite comfortable, even for longer road trips in the 3 to 4 hour range, but I'm pretty skinny. Feedback from my bigger buddies say that, well, these seats were definitely not designed for bigger people. Another thing that was seemingly not super thought out was the position of the elbow rests. On the driver's door side, I can rest my elbow and hold the wheel if I position myself properly, but then on the other side with the center console, it's just an inch too short. I can barely reach the steering wheel while my elbow is resting on the center console. There's also not enough padding here. This is the lowest trim Bolt with the basic B stereo, and I think the stereo sounds fantastic when I'm stopped. Driving at a highway speed, the sub-bass that the stereo produces is too low to overcome the rumble of the road, meaning that bass-heavy music is not quite as impactful as I'd like. Also, I'm not sure if it's my phone or the stereo, but I do get occasional disconnects from Android Auto, anywhere from about 2 to 3 times per hour. The phone reconnects fairly quickly, but it seems entirely at random. Moon phase, or wind speed, or angle of the sun, I'm not really sure what causes it, and I wish it didn't happen. I had one annoying plastic vibration pop up underneath the steering column. Thankfully, a piece of foam tape between a plastic piece and a metal piece solved that because, well, how do I put this? It was annoying. On the windshield, there's this giant hunk of plastic that hides the lane keep assist camera. It makes it really hard to hide a dash cam. Look at where my camera is. Super visible. Everyone from the outside can see that. Speaking about lane keep assist, I'm kind of mixed on it, whether or not I'm actually going to continue using it. On one hand, it makes it easy to text and drive because I don't have to look at the road. Just kidding. Look at the road. That was a joke. On the other hand, the lane keep assist can be kind of annoying because if there's a pothole ahead, sometimes it doesn't see that, and when you try and swerve around the pothole, it'll pull you right back into it. It can also be kind of aggressive about centering when driving tight mountain passes, swervy, curvy roads. Turns out that I ride the outside line quite a bit, and I do that for my personal safety in case somebody comes into my lane. The lane keep assist tries to keep you right in the middle. The car handles all those tight, curvy roads, steep hills with passing lanes, super confidently. Feels great, got lots of power, no worries about passing on an uphill stretch. But I did turn lane keep assist off last time I took a long drive because it got tiring having it constantly pulling me back into the middle when I was riding the outside line. One thing that Reddit finds annoying that didn't personally bother me are the loud beeps and chirps that this car makes. The door chime can't be turned down, but if you wear your seatbelt and you put it on immediately when getting into the car, then it's kind of not a big deal. Also, plugging in the car, the loud neep it kind of makes when it starts charging is very surprising the first couple times. Finally, the last little interior nitpicky thing that I've noticed are these little tiny trunk nubs. The things that hold the shield in that hides whatever's in your boot. These things fall out all the time, and I'm going to lose them. I put a little bit of extra tape around the inside of mine and that helps hold them in place, but I've got no confidence that I'm going to have these in, let's say, 2 to 3 years. When it comes to exterior things, I really haven't noticed any issues, except for the AC. It's not an issue. It's more of a... Hold on, just listen for a second. It sounds like utter trash. It's this high-pitched, horrible whine that's kind of embarrassing. Good thing you can't hear it from inside the car. But this sounds like a cheap, tiny, whiny computer fan rather than a confident, powerful air conditioning system. Well, that was 6 minutes of me complaining. Yay! Again, I want to reiterate that I love the car, and any issue that I've had with it has been relatively minor, or I've been able to solve it in some simple way, like with those trunk nubs. Every time I drive this car, I'm in awe about how much of a step up this was over my original electric Leaf in terms of the extra range, confidence in handling, just little nice to have features like Android Auto. Now, that's not to say that everyone needs a new Bolt. The old Bolts have some other drawbacks, notably from what I've heard, seat comfort, and the biggest drawback, the battery recall. That's not necessarily happening anymore. Some older Bolts have had their batteries replaced, but some are just going to get a software update that makes them low range for 10,000 kilometers. So if you are considering a Bolt, a new Bolt, and this is your first electric vehicle, there's a high chance you're going to love the car, whether that's the EV or the EUV. If you're considering a used Bolt, make sure to do your research about the vehicle's history, check to see if the battery has been replaced, and if it has not yet been replaced, whether or not the option will be available for that specific car. Thanks for watching. I hope the video was helpful. These are some of the things that I wish I'd known before I bought the car. Although most of them are not deal breakers, one or two of the things are a little bit more annoying than the others. Anyways, if you liked the video, thumbs up, subscribe. See you in the next one. Do kind of miss my Leaf's power door, but I guess this is one less thing to go wrong, right?